There we are. Now we're live. Good morning, Marilyn. How are you?
Good morning, Mark.
All
Fantastic.
right. Yes, I've been looking forward to this for a while, and this is a new thing. I usually start at 9, and so we had to. Unfortunately for me, the reason we had to do it is I have to go down and contend with property tax stuff this morning in LA, which I'm not really looking forward to doing because
Mm,
they can't seem to get their stuff together down here. So that's where I'm on my way to after we get done. So we get to this early, but I'm an early morning bird. So getting up at 5 is awesome for me. I don't really mind doing that at all. I like early mornings. I like the fog. I like the coolness and just kind of the newness of the day. So I appreciate you rearranging your time for me so that
No,
we
it's
can do
fantastic.
this.
Like I said,
All
works
right.
out for me too. I'm an early bird
Okay.
too.
All right. So, well, Miss Marilyn, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and we're going to dive right in. We got a few things that we get to talk about. This hour is going to go by quick because, I mean, we've got 9/11, and we've got a book, and we've got your daughter, and so we've got some stuff to dabble into, which is going to be awesome to hear and get to know you a little bit more. So, with no further ado, Miss Marilyn, go ahead and introduce yourself, where you live, and we'll get started.
So obviously, I'm Marilyn Morales. Live in Maple Shade, New Jersey. I actually have only been in New Jersey for about 17, 18 years. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised right there. Been a nurse for over 30 years. I'm board certified as a holistic nurse, and I'm an author of an upcoming book, When the Answer is No, Finding Purpose Through Pain, which we're going to launch together in January of 2023.
Yes, we're going to be sharing that stage that day, so I'm looking forward to that. We're gonna, we're gonna. I've told everybody we kind of there's I don't know, about 10 to 15 of us authors that are going to be
Launching the
together, and we
book.
get to all launch that same day and get to enjoy each other, get to know each other in I think it's Philadelphia. Are we going to be in Philadelphia? Is that
Cherry
where it's
Hill.
at?
We're going to be in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Oh, so we're gonna be in New Jersey. So you got
You're going
that.
to be in my in
See, you
my
got
in my
you
part of the
got the
world.
that's right. You got kind of that New York, New Jersey. I guess did you adopt the New Jersey accent? Is that
Oh,
what?
let's listen. My Brooklyn accent will come through, especially when I'm angry. Okay. And sometimes I say I speak in tongues because my parents are from Puerto Rico. So, when I'm really, really angry, I channel my mom and the Spanish comes out and the Spanglish goes everywhere. That's what I call speaking in tongues.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good. That's good. Raul's just saying hi to us this morning. He's on listening.
Hey, good morning, Raul. I was just with Raul for the last 3 days. We were doing Flashpoint 4.0 with Austin Haynes.
Yes, I had a good interview with him too. It was fun. It was fun talking to him too. He's a good dude. I like him.
Yeah.
Okay, so what? Let's just dab right in. So um, we have I think January 26th is going to be upon. I mean, is it January 6th? Right.
Sixth,
So
seventh, and eighth. Yeah.
6th, 7th, and 8th. That's right. I'm going to go out a little early. I think too. I think I got some of these women. I'm going to do some women's self defense class with while I'm out there. I think I'm going to go early for that. So
That'd be
we'll
wonderful.
see.
I'd like to join one of those.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm gonna enjoy that. I'm going to make sure I'm out there for Daniela's birthday, and
Yeah.
we're going to get started. So let's talk about let's talk about what you do first of all. If you're reading this stuff for 30 years, you've been a nurse, right?
Right.
And let's talk about what that looks like and what nursing, what type of nursing you started with, and where you're at today, and what changed. And I think the 9/11 story will probably come in here because that's where it kind of changed for you, I believe.
Yeah. So an interesting about me, and it's not unique to me, but one thing that is not common is that I became a nurse at the age of 17 years old. So there are these two specialized high schools in New York City that it's like a trade school, right? So I went to Clara Barton for the health professions, and in there you could become a licensed practical nurse. So we spent 2 weeks at the hospital, 2 weeks in school to make sure that we got everything done. And at the end of that, you sit for your nursing boards and you become a nurse that you can practice in the hospital. You can practice, which is what I did initially. In the hospital, I worked for an agency actually where they sent me to different locations because I was in college. So I was doing college full time and I was working full time. Um,
That's kind of unique. Now, do they still have that for teenagers? Is
I
that a viable?
I don't know right now because I will tell you a lot of schools have had to change what they do because of COVID. So when COVID came around the last 2 years, there were not places for these students to go to. even in traditional nursing schools, because you were restricted, because you were trying to limit how many people were coming into the facilities and potentially spread COVID. So I don't know what they were able to do because I know in New Jersey there are courses for teenagers to become certified nursing assistants. So those people that help the nurses on the floor that actually do that, those tasks like bathing patients, taking care of them, feeding them. And they had trouble being able to continue those programs because there were not a lot of places for them to go to because of COVID. So if
Wow,
that's,
such
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'd love to find out if
yeah,
they're still doing that, but I don't know.
yeah, that's unique. It's good to hear that they had. I mean, when I was in school, we had all kinds of trade stuff, machine shop,
Yeah,
plastic shop. I mean, I made skateboards in school when I was going to school. It was awesome. And, auto shop, know how to work on your car
yeah,
and stuff like that. But yeah, it was good that's good to hear that. Get out there and have some trade schools out there so young and being able to do that and getting out to the working world and not have
yeah.
to go into the world with $100,000 debt from college. You know what I mean? So,
Absolutely. New York is
yeah.
known for that. I was known for that, when I was a teenager, is being able to apply to a school and not go to the school that you were zoned into depending on where you lived, but they have given you opportunities to actually experience what you may want to do in the future. Because that's a great way to find out before you get to college whether that's a field that you want to enter or not, you know?
Mm, yeah.
Not everybody that started the program ended the program. So I was just fortunate and blessed that that's what I wanted to do, figured out very early on that, yes, this is the field for me, and continued on then. So even after that, so I worked in different places. Wherever the agency sent me, I went, right? And unfortunately, because I was assaulted in the New York City subway, um,
Oh my
which
goodness.
is which is a horrible experience, I then at the time, I think I was 19 years old. So my father was like, "I don't want you taking the train into the city," because I was working in Manhattan. He was, "I want you to stop that." So I started working in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn, so they sent me somewhere in Brooklyn, and that facility was my first really full-time experience dealing with geriatrics. So it was a long-term care facility, took me on, and then pretty much adopted me. They pretty much bought me from the agency. When you work for an agency and you go and work somewhere, they can't hire you because you belong to this agency. But if they really like you, they can pay a fee and take you from them. And that's what happened to me.
Mm. Oh, that's awesome. Well, so yeah, the subway experience,
Yeah.
I've never done that except for this past year, right? We have a train system here. It's called the Metro Link, and then it goes to a subway in LA. Now the train itself is awesome, right? The
Hmm.
subway is just I I've never been I've never been on anything like that in LA. The subway system in LA is just horrific. And so and that's why my daughter was going to school out there, so I would take her on the train.
Right.
And if it was just a train, I would let my daughter go back and forth, not a problem. It's that 12-minute subway ride that I had to make sure that I went, picked her up from the train because the traffic was so bad, and then
Yeah.
her and I would have to do the subway ride. And I have never seen. I, I can believe that you get assaulted in those things, and I'm a big guy, and and I still got hassled, man. I was like, "You got to be kidding me, man!" So I never let my daughter ride. So, what? How old were you when you got assaulted on that? What
I think
what was that?
I was around 19 years old because I remember that was right before I was 20 when they purchased me. I say that right, when they purchased me from the agency. And like I said, I was 17. As soon as I got my license, I started working for this agency. So I was about 19 years old, and the thing was, it was a Saturday morning. I was dressed as a nurse, and back then you'd wear white uniforms, right? Back then it wasn't these colorful uniforms. Now I'm going to date myself. I graduated from high school in 1986. So I became a nurse in 1986 at 17. So this must have been what, 87, 88, 1988. Back then the nurses used to wear white, right? So we stuck out like a sore thumb. You knew that I was going to work by the way that I was dressed. So I was walking from one very long hallway that connected me from one train to the next. I had to transfer from one train to the next. There was this long hallway um, with nobody in it because it was 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning because my
Hmm.
shift started at 7. So I'm walking through this hallway, and I saw this guy walking towards me, right? Nothing special about him, except he was tall. And what I was looking at, and as a nurse, and all nurses can associate with this, is that we're constantly assessing you, is what we call. We look at you from head to toe, always. Even when we're not at work, we're looking at people from head to toe, right? So I'm looking at this guy as he's walking towards me, and I'm looking at him head to toe, right? And he had boots in his hand, like military boots that had a chain around it. And I remember thinking to myself, if he's got that in his hands, what has he got on his feet? And I looked down at his feet and saw that he had sneakers on, right? But he was dressed all in black and had this, and that's not unusual. New York City has a lot of strange individuals, right? So he's walking towards me. I'm walking past him. And the minute we cross, he turns around and hits me in the back of the head with these boots.
Oh my.
And I'm not a big woman. And then back then, I think I looked like I was 14. So, and I was 90 pounds soaking wet. You know, I'm only 5 feet tall. So I hit the wall, like I with the force. I hit the back of the wall, but I turn around because I'm not, I'm just a different kind of woman too from New York. So I turn around and I don't want to curse on your show, but I turned around and I cursed this
Those do
guy
slip
out.
out.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing it. So I literally cursed this guy out, called him a son of a bee and and faced him. Now this is a big guy. I'm a little girl, but when I'm mad, I think I'm 6 feet tall, right?
It's
So I'm
it's
facing
like a
this
little
guy.
chihuahua.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But I always say I'm never going down without a fight. If you find me,
Mhm.
God forbid something happens to me, the one thing they're going to say is that there were signs of a struggle because I'm not going down like that. So I turn around ready for the fight of my life. Right?
That's
And
so
this
awesome.
guy, I had this, and this goes to faith. If you're a man of faith, then you're gonna understand what I'm saying here.
Yeah, I am.
I had this miraculous medal in my pocket. That morning, I felt something was gonna go wrong. I knew it. I had this intuitive feeling that I didn't want to take the train that morning, and I was anxious. I had waked my brother up and said, "Hey, can you take me to work this morning?" My father worked overnight. My mother was away in Puerto Rico visiting her family, and he was like, "Nah, I got to get my car fixed. I got stuff to do. I can't take you this morning." Right? So I'm upset at him because he won't take me. And I go clean up. I always straightened out my room before I left. And I had this miraculous medal that belonged to me, right? And because I was so upset, I couldn't figure out where to put it. So I stuck it in my pocket that morning and took off for work. So this medal, because of the force that he hit me, happened to fall out of my pocket and onto the floor. I don't know what he saw or what he thought this was. I have no idea. I can't explain it except that it was God. He looks at the floor, he looks at this medal, he looks at me and takes off running. So I grab my medal and I take off running in the other way and start running. The train happens to be right there. I get on the train. A few stops later, I'm off. I start running, 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 running to my job. And when I get there, I say, I've been attacked and just collapsed, you know?
Uh,
And I had been bleeding from the back of the head. I had a concussion. At that point they're like, we got to call somebody. I called my dad. He's off of work. And I was like, I need you to come get me. so so dad obviously goes to Manhattan, picks me up, is now dealing with this and says, that's it. I don't want you on a train again. You need to figure this out. He doesn't want me working, period. I don't want you
right.
working. Go to school and stay home,
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
well, I
like,
have a daughter. I get what he's saying.
yeah, and I'm like, no, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not what's going to happen. I didn't work this hard to do that, but we'll figure this
Mm.
out. My brother then ended up driving me to work every day until I learned how to drive myself, got my own license and started driving myself around. But,
Yeah,
that
that's
changed. That changed my life, that event, because then when I went to work, I went to long-term care. At one point I left that and I started working for the New York City Department of Health as a public health nurse. And in the first months of taking on that job is when the World Trade Center was hit in 2001.
yeah. So now where were you when 2000 when 9/11 hit? Where were you?
So working in Manhattan in less than 2 miles, I was within walking distance of the Trade Center. So obviously, the buildings are huge, right? So if I'm like maybe a mile from it, you can look up to the sky and there they are, right? So literally, you stand on the street, there's the trade center. You see it on your way into work. You're standing on a corner, you look up, and there they are. But it was within walking distance. I could have walked there. So it's the Lower East Side of Manhattan is where I worked, and I was working at a public school, an elementary school of pre-K through sixth grade students. I was the school nurse there through the Department of Health. So that's a little different. In New York City, the Department of Health is the people that man the schools in New York City. They provide the nurses that then will take care of your children. And in my particular school, we had like 1,000 students in that school, in that age range. So that morning, obviously it was September. School had just started, opened up. So everybody was just arriving because the first plane hit before 9 o'clock in the morning. So they were just arriving. And as they were walking into the school, they witnessed, many of the students and parents, the first airplane hit the towers as they were walking towards it. And everybody thinking that it was just a horrible accident at that point. So they were coming in crying, upset, traumatized by what they had just seen. And so I was starting to try to help those people, those people that were entering the school and the students that were in shock. I could tell you these students were in shock by what they saw. You're talking pre-K through sixth grade. These are little guys,
Mm.
and walking in crying with their parents because of the accident that they had just witnessed. And when that first plane hit, the building that I worked in shook, you know, and the noise was so strong. I thought, when a truck backs up and makes that big loud noise,
Mhm.
um,
Right.
I thought it was something like that, you know, and like right outside the school, and I'm like, who the heck is messing around this early in the morning? Was my thought. Somebody is messing around outside. Um, and then as people were coming in, they were sharing this with me, and I went to the front and I was like, oh my God, this is awful. Until the second plane hit. And then I knew that it was something completely different. So 2 weeks prior to that event, the public health nurses of New York City, and this is something that you can look up, anybody can Google this, were taken to Columbia University, and we were trained. We went for a disaster training by the American Red Cross. Um, and in that sitting, in that training, the guy I remember distinctly saying, it's not a matter of if it will happen, but when, and referenced the World Trade Center bombing that happened a few years before. And this is a new job to me. So I'm like,
Oh.
what the heck are we being trained for? you
Mm.
know? And they were like, well, as public health nurses, whatever assignment you're in, if there's a disaster in the city, you'll be pulled to where we need you, which is exactly what happened 2 weeks later.
So where did you have to go from that? Where did you have to go from that? When you say you were pulled, what were you pulled to
Yeah.
do?
So that day, obviously, it was a matter of getting these kids. The communications had gone down in the city. Everybody's fleeing the city. The people that are running from the trade center because they were just told, get out, evacuate, and run. Right. So at one point, I go outside and there's people that are running from the towers. I had gotten a phone call, and I talk about this in the book. I had gotten a phone call before the phone lines went down, where a coworker called the medical room where I was in to tell me, and all she said was, they're jumping. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she hung up the phone. So I said, my coworker and I are talking about this. She was like, let's go outside. What the heck is happening? So we go outside and we see things that we cannot unsee,
Mm.
and believe me, it's hard for our minds to assimilate what we are looking at and what we're seeing. And we're seeing people wanting to end their lives doing it. So we go back inside. Now, as I'm outside, the people that are running away, because at this point, one of the towers had just started to collapse and they're running towards me, grabbed onto me because I had a stethoscope around my neck, and realized I was a medical professional, right? So grabbed onto me and were like, we were just told to run and we don't know where we're going.
Oh.
So, and they already
Mhm.
had stuff all over them, soot all over them. So I was like, come inside. I took them in. It was like four young ladies. So as a mom, I'm a mom at this point, right? I take them and I take them inside and I wash them up. And I was like, my phone was still working. And I was like, call your mothers, you know, let them know you're safe. And I'm going to lead you to where you need to go to get a train to get out of here and get out of here. So the entire day of that day was spent doing things like that, helping people
Mhm.
that were running, getting the students that were in the school connected with somebody to pick them up. And unfortunately, some of them weren't because, we lived in that area. So some of the parents worked in the trade center
Oh, goodness,
um,
yeah.
and weren't getting picked up. So we were matching them up. And then after that, the next day I received communications that, you need to get back in here. We need you to help set up shelters. So they had taken the schools and turned them into shelters for people that couldn't get out of Manhattan. So people that lived in New Jersey or needed to take a ferry or a train, and because all transportation had been shut down, they couldn't get home. Or if they lived, the buildings that lived right next to the trade center, because of all that debris, they couldn't make it home.
Wow. Yeah,
So
that's a lot. That's a lot to take in.
yeah,
I told you that I had a story. So she's number 99. Her name's May Markinette. She's my 99th black belt. She's a female. The second plane that went in, her brother was on it.
yeah,
So her brother was actually on the airplane itself. So 9/11, whenever we have it, we always kind of remember him here, and remembering that she goes every year there too when they read the names and stuff like that. So that's what hit us close. And if you ever look on my other podcasts, I have one named Ronnie Camacho is his name. He was supposed to be on the one plane. He was an airline. He worked for the airlines there, and he was supposed to be on that plane, but something came up where he speaks about this story on that podcast, that was supposed to be his plane home, and his mom thinking he was on that plane. It's quite a story that he has too. I mean, so these stories that you guys have, but being there too, right there at the at the war zone, it was, I'm sure. Yes, you even spoke off camera there a little bit about workers that we don't even know about. Like you were talking about
the sanitation
sanitations.
workers. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were there every single day alongside with the police, the firemen, people that came from all over just to help. Because at that point we thought, it was a recovery. We were trying to get live people out of there. We thought they were buried there and we needed to get them out. Right. So initially these people came ready, yeah, to do whatever needed to be done. And then after that, it was a matter of cleanup and being able to identify people, bring people home so that, families could have closure, identify if they were in there or not. There's so many stories of people who were supposed to be there and weren't. And then
Hmm.
because communications are down, you don't know if your person is in there or not. They could have made it out. Maybe they didn't go to work, but there was no way for you to call them and find out that they were okay. And that went on for a very long time.
Yeah. That's that's pretty heartbreaking to say the least. Well, let me ask you this. So you got to be right there in the thick of it. So I know that even out here, it I remember sometimes, I remember it like it was yesterday, and I would sit in the parking lot of a grocery store or something like that and just kind of contemplating on what just went down here. And um so pissed off, right? Like, man, who the frick attacked us, man? And I was one of those guys that wanted to go. I wanted to go and get after it, right? And I was, I'm past that age at that time. I couldn't, wouldn't been able to do it, but I was super taken back by that. But the community here, man, did they come together? What was it
Yeah.
like in New York? And what is it like still today? Is there still this? What's it like at 9/11 in New York as opposed to anywhere else? What's that like?
Well, I will tell you that right after that, and New York is known for our, we're always in our own little worlds. Nobody gets involved, right? Yeah, rushing, rushing, rushing all the time. But right after that, even that same day, one of the things that I do talk about is that fellowship. because I had just started working there, I think in April of that same year, during the school year. So I had literally just met all these people that I was working with. They didn't know me. We hadn't had an opportunity to develop a real relationship. So me being in that school in the beginning, these people knew I didn't live in Manhattan. I lived in Brooklyn. So it was like the teachers would come down to the room and said, "Hey, we know you don't live here. So if you can't get home, here's my address. You can come stay with me." Unheard of before 9/11,
Mm.
right? That you would let a total stranger in your home. Um, the girl that I worked with, my coworker at the time, I had met her a couple times, but it wasn't like we were close, close. But I will tell you, when she left me, like she was going to go work in a different work site, and I was by myself in that medical room dealing with this. All of a sudden, she came in, and she lived across the street from the school, and she said, "I couldn't leave you." Like she was already safe home and left. She told her husband, "The nurse that's in that building is new. I can't leave her. I got to go back and get her." And
Mm.
she ran back. And when she went in, it was like me seeing God, because I was navigating, because I'm a smart person. I can figure this out. But having somebody that knew what to do within this organization was so key. And when she walked in and said, "I couldn't leave you," she and I
Mm.
became sisters after that. Because when I finally was able to leave the city to go home, because I was determined to go home. I had a 9-month-old that was still breastfeeding, a 3-year-old little girl. My last communications with them in the morning was me promising my family that I would make it home, right before the phone lines went down. So they knew that my determination was I got to get home. They found a nurse to relieve me there 6, 7 o'clock at night so that I could start walking home. And I literally handed my keys to her. All my belongings I handed over to this woman that I had just literally met. And I took my ID and a $20 bill and said, "I'm walking. I'm leaving. And you've got all my belongings." And it was like that. Then 2 other nurses came and said, "Hey, we heard you're from Brooklyn and we heard you're walking, right? And we're going to go with you." So people that I had just met were rallying in the streets. We were like figuring things out for each other, hugging each other,
Uh-huh.
blessing each other. And that continued for a very, very long time. Is it the same now? I don't know. I don't think so. You
Yeah.
know, I think things happen like COVID just happened to bring us again together. We forget the more time that goes by,
Yes.
it's been 21 years. We tend to forget
Yes.
that until something else happens.
Yes. Yeah. It's yeah. I think human beings are inherently good people. I just
Yes.
even though in my profession I go after the ones that aren't, but uh I find it more often that I tell people too when they learn martial arts. I said some of us, like myself, I said it's easy for me to flip script and be a protector, but I said most people that's out of their comfort zone because most people are good people, to be honest with you. But boy,
Right.
it's rough when it's not. So, well, let's talk about your book that you're going to release. So let's talk about the title of it first.
Yeah. So the title is When the Answer is No, Finding Purpose Through Pain.
Hmm.
And basically, it's a lot of times we hope and pray for a positive outcome to situations. And when we don't get what we hope and pray for, it feels like the universe is giving us a resounding no, that we're not worthy of what we're praying for, right? Some people get it, some people don't. So it takes you through my journey of me feeling that way. And I know I'm not alone because I've heard this from so many people. Why me, right? Why do I have to go through this? But when it came to 9/11, I suffered from PTSD after that. And we talk about, what does that do to you? Um, because war, we usually associate PTSD with war, with people who go off to war, the army, the navy, the veterans. We don't think about that when it comes to us. But with 9/11, the war was brought to the civilians. It was brought home to us, and we weren't ready for it. We were not.
Hmm.
So it's a matter of, how did I heal from that? Because I needed to heal from that in order to get better. And then 7 years after that incident, when I finally think I'm turning the corner, I have a little girl named Isabella, who at the age of 7 months old was diagnosed with a rare leukemia. So dealing with that diagnosis in itself in a baby, um, and then finding out that the only treatment for her type of cancer was a bone marrow transplant. That's it. There was no chemo out there that was going to work to fight this disease. Um, and my family, my other two children, and myself and my husband, we were not matches for her. So when we're talking about bone marrow transplants, and those that don't know what that is, right? Your bone marrow, your cells are what makes your red blood cells, your white blood cells. So when you talk about a cancer of the bone marrow, right, a blood cancer, your body doesn't make them normally. So you're subject to infections. You're subject to a lot of things happening to your body because of it. Because the cancer makes you make abnormal cells. So the cells that are produced aren't effective. They won't fight infection. They won't carry oxygen. They won't do the things that you need them to do. So you need to eradicate that, get rid of that cancer in there and replace it with healthy cells. So we need those healthy cells from somebody else. That's why it's called a transplant. You're given somebody else's cells, they're healthy, and they will now in your body produce these healthy cells. So we weren't matches. And the best possible, it's usually from your own ethnic background. So one of the first things we were told was, as a Hispanic, I was going to have a tough time finding that match because there's a low percentage of Hispanics in the Be the Match National Bone Marrow Registry. So that's a registry where people sign up saying, here's my DNA. And if I'm a DNA match for someone else, then potentially I can give my bone marrow to that person. So there was just not a high presence of that. And that was back in 2007 when she was diagnosed. I was told, get on TV, get in the newspaper, start having bone marrow drives because it's going to be hard, you know. So the book talks about that and healing from those type of things, healing from grief, trauma, and stress. But my biggest thing is bringing attention to that there is still a need for people of Hispanic, Black, and mixed ethnicity backgrounds to join the registry because it's still not what I find would be ideal. So let's say if you're Caucasian, if you're white, you have a 79% chance of finding a match on that registry if you have something that you need a transplant for. If you're Hispanic like me, it drops to 48%. If you're Black, that drops to 29%. And if you're mixed ethnicity, and let's face it, who these days isn't mixed, right? We've got a lot of different combinations. And depending on your particular combination, it could be even less than that.
So what is it? So while we have people here listening, and then the replays of this, what is it? I don't think I'm on a list. I don't think I've ever done that. So what does that entail to do?
Yeah, very simple procedure. It is right now, the requirement is you have to be between the ages of 18 and 40 in good health. So if you're between those ages, right, and in pretty good health, you don't have to be perfect health, but in pretty good health, then it's a simple swab of your cheek. And we're all familiar with swabs these days, right, because of COVID, but it's not like that at all. It is even easier than brushing your teeth. A few seconds on each side of your cheek, the swab, you put it in, you send the swab out back to the company, and then you're on the registry. It's as simple as that. It's joining, the kit gets sent to your home, or if you're at a physical drive, you get swabbed right there, and your information is then put into a database. And if you're a match for someone, they reach out to you and they say, hey, you're a match for this person. Are you willing to go through further testing to see if you match them at a higher level? So some blood work is involved in that, and a physical to make sure that you match them at this higher level and that you're healthy and that you're good to do this. Now, a lot of people are hesitant to do this, to say, I'm going to become a donor, because it used to be the process where they would have to go into your hip bone and extract the marrow right from the inside. So the marrow is the soft part inside everybody's bones, and they take that out with a syringe. But today, 85% of the time, it's as simple as giving blood. They take the blood from your arm. It's called peripheral blood stem cells. They take it right from there. They take the stem cells that they need, and the rest of your blood is given back to you. You're monitored for a couple of hours at the hospital. This is all free for you if you're a person, monitored by the physicians, and then you're on your way. Um, I talked to Isabella's donor. So Isabella did have a donor. She ended up having a match. And I asked him how his process was. And he said his was like that. They took it just like if it was taking blood from him. He was there sitting at the hospital, with the nurses. They took it from him, and afterwards he said he just felt tired. Like they put him up in a hotel. So he says, I just went, I was tired. I felt like I was catching something or a little bit run down, but by the next day he was out with his kids at the amusement park. No side effects and feeling fine.
So your daughter that was a match for her
Yes.
and still lost the battle?
Lost the battle, not because of the transplant. So the transplant was extremely successful. Um, and Mike has allowed me to say his name. His name is Mike Hensley out of Oklahoma, was her donor. So I want to give a shout out to him for being my hero.
Yes.
And
Good
because of
man.
him, I was given 6 more months with my daughter because she was fading fast. And because of him, she got out of that hospital as fiery as her mama. And we had, the summer playing and just being a normal little girl, growing with her siblings. Unfortunately, in October of that year, she developed an infection. She had an infection in one of her legs, like a skin infection. And on top of that, she had a respiratory infection. So she caught a cold, like RSV, which is it's a normal infection for children that have normal immune systems, right? But when you give that to somebody, and we all know this because of COVID, right? Those people that have compromised immune systems get sicker than those that have good ones. Well, hers
Right.
was still
Mhm.
compromised, even though she had this transplant. She was getting steroids and she was getting other medications that her immune system was still compromised. So that when she got sick, it wreaked havoc on her little body. She was only 19 months old, and her
Oh.
body's trying to fight these infections, and she just couldn't fight anymore. She couldn't
Mm.
fight anymore. So I lost her a year later, not to this, but to complications of something else, which is very devastating to say the least, that you fight these battles for a year. This little baby is going to the hospital, getting chemo infusions, waiting for her transplant, gets her transplant, and is doing well. And then you lose her like this, you know?
Yeah. That's yeah, that's tough, you know.
That
My
is tough.
sister my sister lost a child too, and so it was that's it's pretty devastating. So it's hard to even come up with words what to say to somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What can be said outside of uh you
I'm
know
sorry.
it's
Yeah.
right. I'm sorry, and at least the memories I guess from what that is what carries you through. I would imagine. So you have other children
100.
now. You have other children.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm a mother of 4. Yeah, Isabella being
Um,
number 3. So yeah, I had 2 older children, and then after Isabella, I had a little guy who's now 11.
he's
His name is
11 now.
Lorenzo. He's
Yeah.
11 now. Yeah, he was born after. He's my rainbow baby, as they call them. It's a child that you have after the loss of another. Um, but one of the things I honor her life. So one of the things that gets me through is not focusing on her passing or the way that she passed, or
Mhm.
the heartbreaking part of that story, but all the lessons that I learned in that year that we had together, and bringing forth what I call her legacy. And that is that whole journey of finding a match and bringing attention to that, and how that, impacts so many others, not just her. There are so many children out there, so many people out there that need this life-saving gift. And because we don't have enough education out there for this particular demographic, you know, they don't know. You didn't know how to join,
No.
how easy it is to do
Mm.
that. So we need to get that word and that knowledge out there. um, and one of the things I learned, just to even though she found her match, so I'm a nurse and I collect everything. So as she was going through her process, I was collecting all the lab work that was being done so that I could study and obsess over it. Um, So I had taken the results of our typing, right, to see if we were matches for her, and I had copies of that. Back in 2007, you could go onto the registry, enter that information, and it would tell you if you had a match out there. It wouldn't tell you where, it would tell you how many. So when I put her information in there, I saw that she had matches, which was fantastic, right? I said, "Oh my God, there's people that match her out there." So then I decided to put in everybody else's. I put in my husband, he had some matches out there. But guess who didn't? Me. Zero. None.
Mm.
My other two children, I put theirs in. They didn't either. So out of in my family, had it been me or my other two children, there was nobody out there for us. She was the only one that even had a chance to fight this thing, you know? But with that, and when I saw that, I remember calling my husband over and saying, "Oh my God, look at this. No matter what happens, we have to continue to do drives. We have to continue to bring attention to this, you know, because look, I don't have nobody out there. God forbid I have this, or something that I needed. I don't have anybody out there. Neither do my children." So after that, we continue to do drives. We continue to do things to bring attention, but it's not enough. It's just not enough. My oldest daughter, who was 10 years old when this happened, 9 years old when her sister was diagnosed, and 10 when she passed, now works for Be the Match, the organization that helps you find your
Mm.
match. She is
Hmm.
now the person that helps you do that. And she shared with me in January, she goes, I have these patients that I'm trying to find, matches for, and I'm having drives, and it's still hard for them to do that. And that was an aha moment for me saying, you know what? I'm not doing enough. I got to do something different. I have to do something different. And that's the book. And that's me coming out of my comfort zone. I'm not a public speaker. I've never taken a
Hmm.
stage to talk about this. I said, so now I'm going to do something different so that I can bring attention to more people of our need for this and bring Isabella's legacy, the lessons learned forward, and continue to honor her life with this.
Well, that's right. That's how we honor people is through the legacy of that. That's a yeah. That's and listening to you. How old's your daughter now? Your oldest one that's doing this.
24 years old.
She's 24 now, and so obviously that impacted her to go this route. I would imagine, as
Yes,
far as
she's
the
part of my
child goes,
book.
right?
This is called Finding Your Purpose.
Hmm.
And when she lost her sister, she always said, I want to do something. Now, this is a little girl, right? I want to be somebody like the people that helped us through this journey. Initially, she wanted to be a child life specialist because that's the person that helped her navigate her sister's illness. They pick you up, they do play therapy with you, they explain everything to you. So, my children, thankfully, because I was at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, so it was right here close to home, were able to visit their sister every day while we were in the hospital. And that
Mm.
person would come and pick up. My son would never go, but my daughter would always go and was helping her. So she said, I want to be that person, the person that helped me. I want to help other kids like me. But through her journey in college, ended up, helping people do bone marrow drives in her college. She was part of a sorority and all that. Became a volunteer with Be the Match, with the Icla da Silva Foundation, actually, which is the people that came to her school. And she got an internship with them in her senior year. And she was like, this is like, I think I want to do this. This is still helping people like us, truly bringing attention. And she honors her sister every day in the work that she does. I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, isn't it? Life and God have a way of putting things together for good. It's always
Absolutely.
been something like that. I yeah, that's quite a story. I wouldn't mind talking to her, to be
Yeah,
honest
you
with you.
should. You should.
You know what I mean? I'd like to talk to her to see, because that's a whole different perspective on what it's like,
Yes.
and then what it turned her life into, and then letting more people out about. You hear about this bone marrow, but you got to get with somebody that uh, you got to get with somebody that's experienced it, so you can get the stories behind it, right? Because
Yes.
you can hear, oh, you need to go do a bone marrow drive, but the importance of it, I think, is better. I mean, you can even at my studio. I mean, I have 250 students at my one school. You know what I mean? Another 100 at the other school. I haven't done anything. I've been in business for 32 years. No one's ever approached me and say, "Hey, can we do a bone marrow drive at the school?" No one's ever
Yeah.
asked me that.
Look at that. Look at that. This is
So,
what I'm talking about.
mhm.
So, doing things like this, Mark, where you bring me on to a podcast where I'm able to reach people now in your state, right?
Uh-huh.
Not just in my little part of the world, but in other parts of the world where we can now connect you with people, that can, because there's representatives of Be the Match in where you are, and we can connect you with them, and you can have drives, and you can help me bring Isabella's mission forward.
Yeah, look and see, this is the owner, my other school I haven't seen me. This is Jay. He's the one that runs that school. For all purposes, it's his school, to be honest with you. But he said the same thing. Let's do it. Now he's in the healthcare industry also. Uh and so I never thought about it until we had this talk. You know what I mean? No, I mean nobody has ever approached
Approached
me.
you.
And, I have influence where I'm at. And let's see, I've been part of I was elected on the Chamber of Commerce here. Uh, I'm very in tune to my community. And we've never talked about it as a community to have a bone marrow thing, ever.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, right. And so it's just, but I haven't came across anybody that something like this hasn't come across my school where somebody had a blood disorder like this that needed to have this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because I know this. If it was one of my students, you can bet I'd be on a mission. And
Absolutely.
but it's like anything else, preparation or whatever. God, I think God designed us to be. That's how we help each other. I think that's how we've this COVID thing. I think there's an immune that's happened now throughout this thing, and that's how we get better. We got
Right.
to heal through each other in order to move forward. So, yeah, I think that's awesome. Yeah, I think I want to talk to your daughter next. I think
Yes.
that would be a good podcast with her. I'd like to hear the
Absolutely.
perspective of what it's like, and um, you know, if you've heard some of my stories too, you've heard some of my stories, but I've lost my nephew about almost 3 years ago to a rare. It wasn't a blood disease, but it was a tumor that he had. He's a firefighter, and
Mm.
it was my sister's middle boy, and he's young, 5 kids. He didn't get to see his daughter. She was born 2 weeks after his death,
Oh my Lord.
and that was a devastating. Um, that was a devastating loss to my family. It still kind of lingers, talking to my sister and stuff like that, and the grief that it is. I see that you've taken your grief and you've turned it into, a mission, and
And that's what
I
this
think
is.
that
This
I
is what
think
this is.
that's you know, talking to you here, I can see we've only got to talk briefly to each other on some of our Zoom calls, but yeah, I can definitely tell that you're just kind of a driven, no nonsense type of woman. So it doesn't surprise me that you said, okay, I mean, jump out of our comfort zone, and this is what I'm going to do. And
Yeah.
the
I said I'm
story
doing
that
it and I'll
you
figure it
know,
out later.
yeah. Well, I think that's I tell everybody that too. You gotta jump in. You gotta jump in. You can't sit and think about it because you're gonna sit and think yourself right out of it. You got
That's
to
right.
jump in and do it. And I agree with I tell everybody that I don't care if it's a martial arts journey or whatever journey you are, you can't come to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to get in shape and then I'm going to come and take class." And that just doesn't work that way. You know, you can't. I tell everybody if you're going to do any kind of martial arts or something, you got to jump in. You got to jump in it. You
Yeah.
can't run. You can run till you're blue in the face. Run until you're blue in the face, and somebody wants to attack you. None of that's going to help you. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to get in here and get after it. So that's an awesome tribute. Now, what I'm going to do too, I want to make sure that because your book is in pre-order now. Is your book
Yes.
complete?
My
Your
book
book,
is complete. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. It's done. It's just ready to roll for January.
So,
But you can pre-order the book now.
yeah. So, what was your experience writing it? Did you
So
have tears writing it? Did you
yes,
have
Yeah, because I wasn't a person that journaled either, even though throughout her journey, people would tell me, "You should write this down, you should share this story," because there's so many stories that came out of just being in the hospital, and my viewpoint as a nurse going through this versus a regular person who's going through this, right? So I had a different perspective of everything that was happening at that hospital and everything that I was witnessing and seeing, not just with my own daughter, but with all the children that were there. Um, but I never did it because I always said because writing it down made it real for me, and there's a part of me that didn't want this to be real. So it became real when I sat down and had to start writing about it. My first chapter was about 9/11. I literally started getting flashbacks as I was writing it
Mm-hmm.
and feeling it, and I had to stop and I had to put it away, you know? And I was like, "Oh, well, the book is about healing, right?" And I used a tool. I called that person that I mentioned to you that was in the room with me, the medical room, because she's the only other person that knows what I was going through. And I called her to tell her, "Listen, I'm having a breakdown. I'm having flashbacks." And she talked me down. One of the tools of the toolbox that I give you is finding who your support system is so that when you need it, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I also mentioned things of how to help heal. So it was hard, just like you're talking about. There's tears, there's emotions, there's putting it down, there's like, I can't do this. And then I have to do this because the end game is that when I'm done, somebody's going to feel better because of this. Somebody's life is going to be saved. This is not just about getting a book out there, it's about saving lives,
Uh-huh.
whether it's emotional or whether physical, because you've joined the registry. Inside each book, there's a page there that links you right to be the match through a special code that says, you know what, it's Isabella's story that touched me, and I'm joining the registry because of her, right? So there's a link inside of each book, and a portion of the proceeds of the book is going to the Isabella Morales Foundation, where I continue to work to bring education to those demographics that need the education.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just just a mission. That is because I had that same experience. I think I've told you that. I think in my world when I had to write about Carlos, he's the one that was killed by a drunk driver on the way to the studio,
Mm,
and that was a brutal. I'm the one that called him to ask him to cover that class. It was a rainy night, a Wednesday rainy night, and I called Carlos and said, "Hey, can you take this class for me? It's Black Belt Club class." And he said, "Sure, Mr. Cox, I'll run down there." And on his way there, he was killed by a drunk driver head on. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that phone call. And you know, but we've kept him alive in that studio also. So I've always had a mission. He loved the martial arts, and so I've always had a kind of a mission to do the same thing. So it's awesome that you have that drive. I dig it, man. It's
I remember you telling that story on one of our other Zooms,
yeah.
and I've never forgotten that story because sometimes we make decisions like that, right?
Mhm.
And it just changes your world. It just changes everything. But sometimes, again, back to when you feel like the answer is no, you find purpose and you keep them alive. Maybe this happened for a reason. For you to
Uh-huh.
be able to bring that story forward and show people that a different tweak, a different perspective can bring honor to those that are fallen.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. That's true. That's very true, Marilyn. Very true.
So you're bringing
And
honor to him with your book, and that's
s-
beautiful.
yeah, that's yeah, this is good. This has been good for me to have, I've learned something today on that. I'm going to ask about that. I'm going to ask that question and I think I'm going to get with you or your
Let's do
daughter, I
this.
guess, and say, "Okay, how do we go about doing this?"
Yeah, no,
I
we're gonna
I
connect.
yeah.
Let's fly out there. Let's do this in California.
Yeah. Cuz
Let's
I'm down for that, you know what I mean? It's y- I'm telling you my school would rally. I just know it's just the kind of people that I have
Yes.
around me. And I got even more than that. I'll be in Georgia in a few weeks and then I fly to Virginia to this the school in the school that I go in Georgia
Mhm.
is massively huge. He's got 500 students. And when he makes a move in his community, it's a major move. And if I have him jump on this, you'll have a whole nother East Coast martial arts school. I've got so many martial arts schools underneath me. that if we made this a mission as part of what we do as an organization, I believe that we can do something good in every one of the schools, that there would be a drive in every school, in
Oh my
every
God,
martial arts school.
I would absolutely love that. I know that Be the Match does something called Get in the Game, where they do this in colleges with football players. So this is something that maybe we can
Mhm,
turn into for the martial arts school. I would absolutely love that. That would honor me, it would honor my daughter, and honor every person that we're looking to save lives.
mhm. Yeah, I think that, this is what's weird about these podcasts that I do, what comes out of them. Every time I do one, it's like, stuff that I didn't know about, something that how can we get I'm kind of a doer. I don't like to talk about stuff and not do it.
Yes.
Um, and I think I think that my connections could help with in these communities. Martial arts schools are known for that. They're known to be a community leader. I know that
Oh,
my
yeah.
community, my big school here in Chatsworth, I know this small town, believe it or not, it just they feel better that I'm around. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
my school's here on this corner. And my son, who's 30 now, he'd be able to jump on there. And I think what you need to do is get that, we get this story out, and get you on a call with all my leaders that all own the schools, let them know what your mission is. And I think that, especially my American Krav Maga Federation, I know that they would jump in, and we would make this. We would make something. We would get some donors out of it for sure, 100%. We're talking about uh, a lot of people that the martial artists are just kind of like that. They'll rally. So
Yeah.
is what they are. So.
Love, and my family is a lover of martial arts. My brothers took martial arts. They didn't get as far as you. My husband was taking Wing Chun for a
Uh-huh.
long time until he got hurt, and now my sons are looking to enroll. So yeah,
That's
we love
good.
that. We love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's good. It's really good, man. This had been yeah, this I told you this hour would go by quick, and and here we are. But I think that what I want you to end with is where to get your book. Okay. I want you to tell everybody where they can pre-order that. I'll have it. I'll have an audio podcast of this also. So we do this live, but I'll have it in audio format so people can just listen to it, through, my stuff is on Spotify and, Apple Podcasts, and most podcast people, they can find my podcast at. And then you can share it so we can share your story and
Awesome.
get
Beautiful.
out there and get after it. And your daughter's name is Isabella, if I remember right, correct?
Isabella. Yeah,
Right.
Isabella.
I think you have a sister on here. Is that your sister that's listening? Get
Lourdes.
busy get busy for Izzy. Is that what
Yeah,
she said?
that was
Yeah.
our
So
battle cry. That was our battle
yeah,
cry during her thing. Is let's get busy for Izzy.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, she's
Mm,
on here. Yeah, she's on here listening. We had a lot of people. I just want to make sure we say hi to everybody that said hi to you. Emilio came on here quite often. Daniela's been on here
my buddies. Yeah,
listening.
I'm a family.
Yeah. Carrie was here. Let's see. Walker was here. And Emilio. Raul was saying thank you. He's probably signing off and out about now. So that's good. So go ahead and tell everybody
So
where.
you can pre-order my book at izzy'slegacy.com, IZZYSLEGACY, izzy'slegacy.com. You can pre-order my book. You'll get a signed copy right from me. You can read about my mission, and in addition to that, you can sign up from the registry right from my website. So if you're hearing this and you don't want to wait for a drive, and I encourage people to do that, if this story has touched you, please go on to the website. It's under Save a Life, and it goes right there. You answer some questions. The kit will be sent right to you. It takes less than 3 minutes for you to swab your cheeks and send it right back, and there you're in. No cost to you.
Yes, that's it. So we got
That's
that.
it.
Yeah, Emilio's putting it out there for you too.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you.
Got your website. Daniela's put it out there too to pre-order the book. We'll get it out there, and we're going to get after it, and we'll see what we can collaborate together. And
Yes.
I'll get with you some more so you can introduce me to your daughter. I'd like to get that perspective of her, and we do another one of these, and we'll collaborate and let's see what we can do with the schools. Um,
Amen.
and
Thank you. Thank
we'll
you.
be able to do
God
something.
bless.
All
Yeah,
right.
let's do this. Let's do this, Mark.
All right. All
All
right,
right.
Marilyn. You have
Have
a
a
good
great
day at
day.
work.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.